So welcome everyone, I'm Julian McNally from Active Living in Melbourne, and today I'm interviewing Rachel Collis, therapist and coach and ACT trainer in Brisbane.
Yes.
Yep. And Rachel's running a specific section of the Sydney Skills intensive that is on this coming February 2020, the 1st and 2nd. So Rachel, I just wanted to ask you a few questions about what you've got planned for the workshop. Probably the first thing I'd like to know is, there's plenty of ACT trainings around Australia at the moment. You can get things by webinar overseas as well, or travel overseas to conferences. But what do you think this intensive offers that maybe other trainings don't?
So the thing I'm most excited about is getting some training from 3, and hopefully including maybe more than me too, 3 really experienced ACT trainers, Australian ACT trainers, who probably don't get to headline that much at the kind of big events. And I love the work of all 3 of you, and I know you all experience both as practitioners and as trainers, and so I think it'd be really, really cool to step out and see things that perhaps people who are trainers who are kind of at the coal face of the work are talking about. I think that'd be fun, and explore our real experiences, our lived experience of what this looks like.
That's a really good point, and I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, I mean, I know there are, headline trainers out there who do a fair bit of face-to-face work.
Yeah.
But for you, me, Matt, and Julie, so that's Matthew Smout and Julie Grove I'm talking about as well, we're pretty much all day in, day out doing the work. So
and I think that's always interesting. I love those other trainers who do make training, they're wonderful trainers. But I think there's something about being with people who are doing the work and can really relate to what it's like to be in those rooms and have those sometimes really quite tricky conversations that are really real.
So in this workshop, you and I think also Julie are going to be focusing on functional analytic psychotherapy, or we'll call it FAP from now on to save a mouthful of words, which might not be familiar to some people. So like what would you say that training in FAP has to offer someone who's already a skilled ACT practitioner?
So there's a lot of FAP in ACT, that they both kind of come from the same basic, behavioural school of contextual behavioural science. And what I found when I learned FAP compared to when I learned ACT was that FAP kind of focuses very specifically on some very specific skills around those moment-to-moment interactions of being really present in the room with your client and really looking at what kind of behaviour you as in my case, coach, or in your case, therapist, what behaviour you are evoking in your client in the room and what behaviour you're reinforcing and punishing. And getting really, so it's this beautiful kind of fine work around really becoming very, very attuned in the room to not just what you're talking about, but kind of how that interaction is playing out and whether in the room you are evoking the kind of things that the coachee or client is really wanting to work on together. So that's I don't think it's different to ACT. I think it's just like a beautiful kind of subset of ACT skills that I think when people are having to train the whole of ACT, they don't have time to really get into that micro skills.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny actually, as you're talking about this, Rachel. It's what you just said, what you just described, reminds me a lot of the way Emily Sandoz, who was here in Australia recently, does in her clinical behaviour analysis workshops, which is like, let's just pay attention to the behaviour in the room and work with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not really different to, I mean, it's behaviour analysis, so it's functional analytical psychotherapy. The reason why it's called that is because we constantly looking at the function of behavior and constantly doing a behavior analysis with the client over and over again, of catching these moments in the room. Okay, what was that? Let's just pull that apart. And yourself as a therapist or coach looking at, and what am I doing that is evoking particular behaviors, and what am I doing? Am I reinforcing the behaviors that are the ones that the client really wants to work on, or am I inadvertently reinforcing behaviors that are their kind of old patterns that really they want you to disrupt, and that's why they're in the room with you.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting and exciting too, because I haven't interviewed Matt or Julie or myself yet about the intensive, but I know for the part that I'm going to be working on, I'm going to be looking at how can you as a therapist look at your own behaviour and alter that in order to have an effect on that person sitting opposite you, or the people in the group that you're working with, if you work with groups.
I think that's going to be a cool thing about the workshop. As we work together to develop it more, I think there's these lovely kind of themes that go through all of the work that we're doing, that we'll be able to create lovely echoes between each other of how these ideas interact.
Yeah. Oh, gee, I'm getting excited thinking about it. I haven't stopped, because it's only 2 days before Christmas virtually, to actually think about what that's going to be like running it and how much we'll learn as well.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question I've kind of got for the other trainers as well, in one form or another. So, we've all had the experience of go along to a workshop 1 day, 2 days, or a conference, get really excited about some skills, but then you leave it, and how do you put that into practice? And so I'm wondering, for someone thinking about committing to this, will there be something that you can offer, or some suggestions that you might have? You don't have to say what they are now, where they can continue whatever they learn at the workshop afterwards.
So there's a few things that are in my mind about that. So one is the brief that we've been given from ANZ ACBS is to make this a very experiential workshop with lots of skills practice. And I was delighted about that, because those are my favourite workshops to attend and also to run. Right. So the first thing is, we're not going to just be talking theoretically at them. They're going to be practicing those skills through the course of the 2 days, so that hopefully the first time they try out the skills is going to be on somebody sitting next to them in the room, rather than actually on their paying clients, so they can get it wrong a bit. Yeah, I am in favour of giving people kind of real tools, kind of handouts with tools for how to introduce these. So one idea that I'm hoping to share with people, it might be just with the handout, we might talk about it more, is in fact they have a thing called the fat wrap, which is fat wrap. Yes, fat wrap. Yeah, which is about you. To kind of do fat well, you kind of need to get informed consent from your client. So you need to, so I did it today with a client. I kind of said, I just need to talk to you a little bit about the way I work. So one of the ways I work is that the stuff that you're working on out there in the world also is likely to show up between you and I. And if it shows up between you and I, then that is a nugget of gold. And I will pause us and say, what's going on there? And together we can kind of pull it apart. And so my hope is to give people really very, very practical and real strategies for that, and I think each of us will, which is this is how I do this. And obviously then people will need to integrate it into their own practice and how they work, but then to get a real lived sense of this is what this could look like for you. So that's my intention, and I think that's all of our intention.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that, Rachel, because like I'm hoping a lot of the practitioners who come to this workshop will be supervisors like you and I are, because I'm finding that what you just described over the last 2 years, that's what I end up doing with a lot of my supervisees. So the content might be about the client, but the actual process between me and the supervisee is, even though I don't consciously practice FAP a lot, it's very FAP-like.
Yeah.
It's like, look at what's going on here.
Yeah. And I think FAP just kind of puts into words some of the things that are in ACT.
Yeah.
Around that stuff, around that we kind of consciously call out. So this is one of those moments when you kind of pulled a face, and what happened inside me is I felt that you disagreed with what I'd said, and I felt a little bit stupid. And I wonder if that might be sometimes how your clients feel.
Nice.
Let's look at that kind of, let's look at what's going on, what that face was and what was going on for you, and how we can, and of course, what I've just described there in fact terms is in evoke. I've said something quite challenging, hopefully with lightness and compassion and all that sort of thing, for us to kind of, really start to pull apart those moment-to-moment interactions, which is gold.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me to my final question. Just say the top 2 things that you would want practitioners to take away from this workshop.
So there's a couple of things. So one is a kind of slightly side answer to that question, which is that, as we mentioned at the top, I do coaching, not therapy. I do leadership, career, and executive coaching. And I love ACT workshops. I love them. And often I sit there having to kind of translate what's being talked about to my world and my conversations. And so one of the things I'm hoping that we can offer the coaches and org sites and people like that in the room is we might kind of occasionally go off and do a translation piece around, so this activity, this is how you could do it in an organizational setting, and this is how, and then practice it from a coaching perspective rather than a psychotherapy. So the piece around that, really hoping that people from an organizational background will feel kind of that work has been done for them, of how do we make this practical, and then equally well, when I'm kind of center stage, that you guys, you and Julian and Matt, will help me translate my worldview into a therapy worldview, so that we can dance backwards and forwards, because there's a lot of the fundamental skills are very, very similar, but the actual examples are different, and there's differences in how we work. So that's the first thing. The second thing around what I hope they'll take away is I hope they'll have fun. And it'll have been, just enlivening, fun 2 days where you've got to hang out with other fun, cool people who are interested, are kind of passionate about this work and passionate and might make some new friends and acquaintances. And that they feel like they've got some practical things that they can actually really use. That there's, a few ideas that they're like, oh yeah, Julian suggested that in this moment, this might be a move I make that might be different to the move I usually make, and I'm going to try that and see what happens, see how that unfolds. So they feel themselves a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more diversity of options of where they can go in those tricky moments.
Fantastic. Yeah, already I'm listening to what you said, especially the first part of your answer with my I run a practice hat on, thinking, okay, for the people that I manage or deal with in the practice, how will I use that? How can I have those kinds of conversations maybe different to how I do it? So again, I'm looking forward to getting trained.
I think we're all going to learn from each other, which is lovely. Get a chance to work with other trainers that you're really excited to hear.
Thank you for listening to our little chat, folks. And if you're wanting to register for the Sydney Skills Intensive, you can go to the ANZACBS website, anzac.com. I don't think it's .com.au. I should have checked that, but just Google ANZACBS and register. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks, Rachel, for joining us today.
Thanks very much. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Julian.
Bye.